Hello, everyone. I'm Abigail Melendres, and I'm going to discuss what really is corruption and what are the efforts of the government in combating this issue. In most noteworthy, this act compromises the rights and privileges of others. Corruption primarily includes activities like bribery, favoritism, graft, etc., which we're going to discuss later. This topic is certainly reflects greedy and selfish behavior. Nearly all societies regard corruption as an evil. And by the end of this presentation, we will be correlating corruption to public accountability. For the outline of the topic, we will further discuss the definition of corruption based on the different perception and based on scholars. We will also enumerate and analyze various forms of corruptions and giving good examples. Historical perspective, tracing it from colonial times up to the greedy heights of the Marcos administration and on the various administration since. Also, summary of laws and policies related to corruption prevention will be shown in table, indicating a comprehensive list of corruption countermeasures. We will answer the question for the remedies taken against corruption. So, what measures are being taken to remedy publicly identified problems in this field, and what degree of political priority and public support do they have? So, let's start. Corruption defined. In the past 2 decades, ayan. So corruption ruins lives. According to the website of the Global Anti-Corruption Group, the Transparency International, they said that it's a truism that is seen, felt, and perceived by citizens, especially poor, diba? In many countries in Asia, including Philippines. So we're not exempted. So in this first bullet, first item, in the past 2 decades, general consensus has emerged condemning corruption as one of the most damaging factors for development. Corruption is seen to undermine the cohesion and strength of whole societies. The battle cry to combat corruption is sounded. So in this lead to the second box. Corruption is a field of study linked to the political processes. So the use and abuse of authority and power on the one hand, and the disfranchisement of those who have little power. Corruption is linked to the political process. Why? Because there is abuse of public office for private gain. It is an explanation for economic underdevelopment because it competes for resources and negates the efficient allocation of resources. So the corruption is the field of study expanded and evolved from how scholars in the immediate post-war period perceived it. So then corruption was thought of a process and practice that systematically transpired within the bureaucratic structure. That was according to Carino in 1986. The third point is corruption is the misuse of authority and public power to benefit one's private interest. One of the best examples here is the manipulation of the stock market and other abuses of commercial positions for personal gain. Note that the public power is often associated with the public sector. It has no monopoly of it because the private sector is, in most cases, involved in corruption through a greedy or what you call dishonest transaction within the government. The corruption exists even in advanced countries where governments are mature or relatively mature. Now let's scrutinize how the scholars define the corruption. So we have Hatchcroft and Scott. In 1997, Paul Hatchcroft claims claims that the corruption occurs most strongly and is sustained when propped up by the political power. He said that it connects corruption to a politics of privilege, rent-seeking behavior. So this serves as a tool for coddling followers and supporters. However, this is the paradox in that the same supporters and followers are among the factors that pressure political power holders to engage in corruption in order to obtain the resources necessary to retain them. Scott, on the other hand, he provides explanation to corruption and roots it back to colonialism, corruption being necessary instrument in domination of over developing nations. So, yun. Scott, he also emphasized that corruption is necessary instrument, no, of domination of overlapping nations. Yan. Through different lenses, international and local scholars have written about corruption, echoing those who have written before them, affirming, for example, biased policies and their role in perpetuation of corruption in unregulated marketization, that is corruption among others. So that's Pascual and Lim in 2001. Moving forward, there are many different types of corruption, as there are various scales of it. So depending on which society is involved and political institutions they're in. So it's according to Co. So number one is grand corruption. This consists of large bribes, often worth millions of peso, to secure commercial contracts and or some other business advantages. There is also extreme cases in which the state is held captive to the corrupt interest of private individuals or groups. And now this lead to the state capture. So example is the grand kleptocracy of the Marcos era, the use of public office to perpetuate one's position. Okay, so as defined, it is which corrupt interests control the state itself and use the machinery of government to serve their private interest. Another type of corruption is the petty corruption, which refers to small acts of facilitation for monetary consideration to speed up the routine and legitimate transaction of business or other services. So this petty corruption, this one, for example, is gaining benefits involving people with circumvent administrative rules or administrative corruption by using their term, or yung bribery, gift giving, bribery due to influencing and gift giving. So this tinatawag na petty corruption, it has a gray area between acceptable and not or unacceptable acts of giving. Yung political influencing invites debate on whether it is corrupt act or simply a political act lang that tries to sway a decision or action. So medyo gray area pa siya. This graft is often separately mentioned from corruption. This is strictly speaking another form of corruption. But the distinction between graft and corruption lies in fact that this graft, as you can see the definition, utilizing resources, time, and facilities by someone who is from within the agency without necessarily transacting with another person, So it's yourself lang, no? He utilized the resources of the government. On the other hand, corruption involves a corruptor and one corrupted. Though different from each other, this graph, just like corruption, clearly involves the use of public resources to serve narrow interests. So there's still the use of public resources, but without the third party or another person. Unlike kapag corruption kasi, it involves other parties. So alam both sides, no, yung ginagawang dishonesty or yung corruption na tinatawag nila. Yan. How about gift giving? Yan. Gift giving between an office holder and a client. Yan. In a given gift giving in the given society or tinatawag na people's habits, this is culturally acceptable and this may be considered normal and not an act of corruption. However, some behavior may be interpreted as corrupt act in another society. So, pwede dito sa isang society ay acceptable siya, but in the other society, hindi siya, tinatawag siyang corrupt act. So, dito kaya sa atin sa Manila or sa NCR, how are we going to distinguish this? Corrupt act or not? Or culture lang talaga siya ng mga Pilipino. So, yun, medyo, yun, sinasabi ko kaninang gray area. So, influencing, though this is quite broad definition pa din ng corruption, bound definition between acceptable and unacceptable is also hard to define. So, for example, political lobbying, this is legit or a form of influencing and this is legit. But, ano yung but ito? Yung secretive contacts and favoritism. Pag pumasok na dito yung favoritism or medyo secret na siya, or the influencing that is appropriate to public service, this may be considered as a corrupt act. Okay? Furthermore, let us proceed to the historical perspective. Okay. Prior to colonial conquest, Filipinos live and believe in norms of honesty and fairness. So we Filipinos are, sabihin na natin, honest and fairness prior to the colonial conquest. Bago pa dumating itong mga era na ito. First is yung Spanish era. Public office was viewed and treated as the king's property. So king's property ito. And depende sa kanyang discretion kung paano niya ito i-dispose, whether award it or to grant it. So it is a matter of distance. The management of the colonial government, so which is 10,000 miles away, led to some bureaucratic corruption. Dahil 10 miles away ito. Due to distance from Spain, yung mga Philippine-based administration, they utilized this wide discretion, which then led to abuse of authority and to corruption. So that's how it started then, yung Spanish era. Then yung American era, dito, civil service was formally introduced in an attempt to inculcate professionalism. So medyo positive din. There's no such, there's not much mention of corrupt. In the Japanese era, medyo ito ay extreme, there is extreme poverty that offer temptations for corruption. So dito naman, ang cause is yung, yung poverty. Or sabi dito, rebellion in the countryside. Nagkaroon ng rebellion, which is yung rapid expansion of hope under extreme. So nagkaroon ng extreme poverty. This one is, I think we are familiar with, is the yung 1965 na Marcos administration. This is widely associated not just with abuse of power and massive violation of human rights, but also with corruption to a degree never experienced before. So ganun na lang katindi yung degree ng corruption during the Marcos administration. Okay, this led to the use of the term plunder rather than just the plain and simple corruption, just to describe the administration's behavior. So the use of the term plunder. And this plunder aptly described the extent of corruption committed by this administration and causes of his downfall by the People Power Revolution noong 1986. So ano ba nangyari noong 1986? Sino ba ang namumuno noong time? People Power Revolution, and it's Aquino. So recent interpretation ng corruption is called political corruption. It is related to the electoral exercise. Ito yon, yung mga vote buying, use of authority and public resources and machinery to campaign and promote one's stay in the office, and subversion of the rules and procedures to benefit a particular party or personal interest. Now, itong time ni Aquino, 1986, The programs was set and two goals in mind. So number one is the recovery of Marcos' ill-gotten wealth and the prevention of the curtailment of corruption within the bureaucracy. For me, the main goal here is to restore the government, trying to restore the damage, di ba, done by the Marcos administration. All right, so knowing the summaries and laws. So if only the laws and policies were to be the basis for this of the states of corruption in the country, the Philippines would be, I think, ranked among the most corrupt-free. There are numerous laws and policies legislated and programs are in place all across the public sector. Merong penalties, merong sanctions, these are all defined. And here the summary of the laws and policies related to corruption prevention, which is shown here in this table, the comprehensive list of corruption countermeasures. So yeah. Here we have three columns: the law or the policy, the intent or goal, the status, and remarks. The Republic Act 1379 calls for forfeiture of property unlawfully acquired by any public employee in behavior of the state, covers property unlawfully acquired during incumbency and out of proportion to lawful income, sorry. So the remarks here, the Ombudsman conducts lifestyle checks among public employees, especially in agencies involved high revenue generation and revenue spending. Penalty is up to 5 years imprisonment or fine up to 10,000 or both, pwedeng both siya. RA 1319, an act declaring forfeiture in favor of the state, any property found to have been unlawfully acquired by public officer or employee and providing for the procedure. The intent or goal here is to enumerate what may be considered as corrupt acts. Requires the submission of the public employees' statement of assets and liabilities every 2 years. So we are familiar with SAL-N. So the public employees are obliged to submit this every 2 years. And the penalties include imprisonment kapag hindi ka nakapag-comply between 6 years to 1 month and 15 years. Disqualification from public office, forfeiture of unexplained wealth. RA 6020, it provides for the creation of an independent agency to attend to complaints when citizens are prejudiced by decisions, actions of public officials. Ang status dito, the agency Citizens Counselor was never created. PD or Presidential Decree 46 makes gift giving unlawful. Ito naman po yung gift giving for government and personnel, including Christmas. Prohibits entertaining public officials and relatives. Status here, probably one of the most controversial, least understood by many people. Gift giving is often treated as a cultural practice and is difficult to do away with. PD 677 requires submission of statements of assets and liabilities every year. PD 749 grants immunity for prosecution to gift and bribe givers when they agree to testify in bribery charges against public officials guilty of offense. Law or RA 6713, Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officials and Employees. Intent is to promote high standards of ethics among public employees, emulates public office to highest esteem. Status forms core ethical standards set by civil service, also enshrined in the 1987 Constitution. RA 7055, an act strengthening civilian supremacy over the military. The intent is created, or goal, it created 2 courts to try erring AFP members subject to military laws, crimes in the penal code, and local government ordinances are tried in civil courts. remarks, the president may decide to direct trial to be in civil courts. The president has the discretion to decide on where to try the case. So these are some other policy act defining penalizing the crime of plunder, defining jurisdiction. So places Sandigan Bayan as special court at part with Court of Appeal. Here. Executive Order number 12, creating the Presidential Anti-Graft Commission. Ang goal dito is to assist the government in campaign against graft and corruption, and conducts the task of investigating and hearing administrative cases and complaints against presidential appointments and or government personnel who have conspired with presidential appointees. Remarks, the focused approach on the doables, priority agencies, and the stage-based prevention, education, deterrence, and strategic partnership is commendable. In fact, this should be the ombudsman approach. However, the mandate seems to be redundant and overlaps with that of the ombudsman. Omnibus Election Code defines election rules, including limits to campaign expenditures, accountability aspect of report expenditures or we can hardly enforce, allows political parties switching and does not encourage party discipline. Penalty and sanctions are weak. EO number 12, creating the, Okay, so that's it. All right, so after knowing that, let's now proceed to the perception on the extent of corruption in the public sector. So here you see tables. If we have the 3 years, that 1999 to 2000. Let's see the percent of those surveyed. Okay, in 2001, in 2001, 47, as you can see, 47 of the public believe that there was a great deal of corruption in the government. And according to SWS, this was higher compared to only 38% who said in 1999. 34% said there was some corruption happening in the sector. So 2 years later, those who said there was corruption had risen to 36. Only 7% in 2001 said that they did not notice any corruption taking place in the government, down from 12%. In combating corruption shown in this table, table 4, the increasing trend in public perception can be attributed to the public's belief that government has done nothing to fight graft and corruption. As indicated in this table, the government's sincerity in eradicating corruption was questioned by 30% of those polled in 2000. And this observation was highest in the National Capital Region, according to Ho. Excuse. Now, let's proceed to the remedies taken against corruption. So here's the question. What measures, if any, are being taken to remedy publicly identified problems in the field? And what degree of political priority and public support do they have? We have here that we know that corruption has been a major problem for a long time. And the Philippines boasts as an active society who's taken strong stance in combating corruptions. We have local initiatives, for example, the Concerned Citizen of Abra for Good Government, CCAGG. Other groups to monitor local governments like we established, the Negros People's Craft Watch in Bacolod, the Volunteers Against Crime and Corruption, has been supporting whistleblowers in government offices. We also have networks and alliances work together to build public awareness in corruptions. So examples given, Transparency and Accountability Network, Evelio Javier Foundation and Transparent and Accountable Governance Project, or the TAG. Global Distance Learning Network of the World Bank works in partnership with the government institutions. And also we have the multilateral donor agencies. Examples are the U.S. Agency for International Development and United Nations Bank Program. We also have Asian Development Bank and the World Bank. Obviously, any form of corruption has been a has a domino effect on everyone, particularly the poor. Not only does it allow poverty and the social discontent to persist, but most importantly, the government loses the trust and confidence of the people it serves. So if the government is not worthy or cannot be trusted, paano pa mape-preserve yung trust ng public sa kanila? So they will lose the trust and confidence sa government. Also, the other countries' anti-corruptions are, for example, sa Hong Kong, created an independent anti-corruption against the impartially implements anti-corruption laws, and also the Thailand. Meron din silang impartial body that runs big fishes. Okay. Others, we have CEDP, or implementation of the Community Employment and Development Program through the NEDA. It was established 1987, allocating small projects to community as a way of augmenting people's income. Through the MOA, NEDA, and the DBM, CCAGG was provided with training on the monitoring the CEDP, the list of projects. So nagkaroon ng transparency through this MOA between NEDA and the DBM and CCAGG. All right. So that ends my report. And the heart of this topic is all about the corruption. And on the other hand, the public accountability. We, as a government employee or a public servant, we must preserve our integrity, even with or without people around us. So, without someone, diba? So, kahit nasa office tayo, kahit nasaan man tayo, the question here is, napapreserve ba natin yung integrity natin? Honest ba tayo? So sa atin nagsisimula ang pagbabago. Totoo yung yung kasabihan natin na yun, na nasa atin nagsisimula ang pagbabago. So kung sisimulan natin sa maliit na bagay na pagiging honest at integrity, I think kahit paano makakapag-create ito ng difference sa ating government administration. So, yun lamang po, at I hope may natutunan po tayo dito sa topic na ito about corruption. And I hope you consider every little things in definition, how are we going to take action. By knowing it, I hope magkaroon ng impact ang topic na ito sa bawat isa sa atin. That ends my report. Again, my name is Abigail, and thank you for listening.